perception. Plato was of the opinion that reality cannot be formed in our senses. Our senses merely perform perception. Therefore, what we perceive does not reflect true reality nor essence, according to Plato. Plato introduced another concept of essence in terms of our body and our soul. Plato argued that the soul is a universal pure that is immaterial, invisible, and immortal, whereas the body is the opposite, material, visible, and mortal. The body therefore acts as a component of distortion, which merely changes the reality perceived by the soul and therefore the individual. This is also described in Plato's Cave, which is a story which involves individuals who from birth on are chained in a cave and can see nothing but shadows created by other individuals. The chained individuals perceive what they see as being real, when in reality it is not. Once these chained individuals free themselves from these chains, they are able to leave the cave and perceive true reality. With the concepts of capitalism in terms of Marxism in mind, one could say that free individuals neither want to serve the capitalists nor be served by capitalism, but instead should cut the invisible threads which connect them to capitalism by valuing oppressive capitalistic ideologies. Disconnecting with oppressive capitalist ideologies can therefore be achieved by de-identifying with capitalism, by devaluing things such as wanting to own a fast car, living in a beautiful white picket-fenced home, or owning goods that make us stand out from the ones who cannot afford said goods. In this thought, freeing oneself from capitalism can be achieved by freeing oneself from alienation. Not only alienation of our labor, but from alienation of ourselves, thus preventing the commodification of ourselves in terms of personality. Janet Lee DeCosmo wrote a famous quote on this particular matter. While objectification is a necessary part of the dialect, alienation, or estrangement, is a condition which must ultimately be overcome in order for man to return to his true essence. Therefore, freeing oneself from labor in which an individual is commodified can be achieved by returning to one's true essence, by replacing what one believes to desire with what one truly desires. In this section of the video, I'm performing what Marx considered creative work. Creative work is work that one performs that is able to transform oneself with nature, basically also considered a hobby. In the process of work, however, humans lost themselves due to alienation and by working for another person. If one works for another person, one is under the domination and compulsion of another human being and therefore cannot perform free labor. With the process of alienation, one loses the product of this free labor and therefore the transformation of one's creative work with nature and oneself. Therefore, the system of property and possession, which is capitalism, is the reason for alienation. Therefore, in the thought of Janet Lee DeCosmo, if we perform creative work and therefore return to our true essence, we ultimately also overcome alienation and therefore return to our freedom as who we are as people by performing creative work. In social types of recreational photography, such as event, wedding, and commercial photography, materialist desires are created not only for the photographers of such types of photography, but mainly its viewers, society. If we compare said photography to concepts of capitalism in terms of Marx, we can quickly understand what this type of photography can do to the viewer and therefore society. In terms of commodification of oneself and alienation of oneself and false consciousness, we could suggest that one's freedom is inhibited by the capitalist values said photography presents. For instance, in event photography, many individuals are exposed to the material through social media such as Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or Snapchat. The viewers of the material oftentimes consider what they see as something they desire, such as a new car or friends to party with, because they think that these individuals are successful. Therefore, oftentimes, that behavior is recreated or at least attempted to be recreated by the viewer, thus forming material desires. Landscape photography can take us away from identifying with oppressive ideological forces, especially if done by interest, not by occupation. By viewing recreational landscape photography, one does not create materialist desires such as owning a particular watch, nor is a social desire being created, for instance, going out to party. Instead, the opposite is created, a sense of going into nature and trying to perceive it not with one's senses, but with one's essence, according to Plato. Therefore, in landscape photography, one does not become commodified as a person, nor is said individual alienated, which ultimately frees one as an individual from a capitalist society and thus lets one live in one's true essence.